Right, so there's this house. Creepy old thing. Victorian, probably haunted. You know the type. Tall, looming, with windows that seem to watch you as you walk by. The kind of place kids dare each other to approach on Halloween. It's been standing there for over a century, and it looks like it hasn't had a friendly visitor in just as long. You know the kind. Dark wood, dusty portraits staring at you, that sort of thing. The air inside feels thick, like it's been holding its breath for decades. Every piece of furniture seems to have a story, and none of them are happy ones. The wallpaper is peeling, revealing layers of history that no one really wants to uncover. Anyway, it belonged to my great-aunt, bless her soul. She was the last of the family to live there, and she held on to it like it was a treasure. To her it probably was. She always said the house had character, but I think she meant it had ghosts. She was a bit eccentric. Always wore these old-fashioned clothes, even when it wasn't Halloween. She had this way of looking at you, like she could see right through you, and she had all these strange habits that made the neighbors talk. Collected dolls, talked to herself. You get the picture. Her collection of dolls was the stuff of nightmares, hundreds of them, all with those glassy eyes that seemed to follow you around the room. She'd sit in her parlour, talking to them as if they were old friends. It was unsettling, to say the least. When she popped her clogs, I inherited the place. Didn't want it, obviously. Who would? The house was a relic, a museum of oddities that no one in their right mind would want to live in. But there it was, with my name on the deed. But family pressure, what can you do? Everyone said I should at least go and see it. Maybe sell it if I could. They didn't understand what it felt like to be in that house, the weight of its history pressing down on you. So I went to have a look. The moment I stepped inside, it was like stepping back in time. The air was musty, filled with the scent of old books and forgotten memories. I could almost hear the echoes of the past whispering in the corners. Seemed all right in the daytime. The sunlight streaming through the dusty windows gave the place a kind of melancholic beauty. It was almost peaceful, in a way. But I knew better than to be fooled by the daylight. Bit gloomy, sure, but nothing out of the ordinary. The rooms were filled with shadows, but they were just shadows, right? Or so I thought. The house had a way of playing tricks on you, making you see things that weren't there. First night, though, different story. As soon as the sun went down, the atmosphere changed. The house seemed to come alive, every creak and groan amplified in the silence. It was like the walls were whispering secrets, and none of them were good. Couldn't shake the feeling someone was watching me. It was as if the house had eyes, and they were all focused on me. Every time I turned around, I half expected to see someone or something standing there. Every creak of the floorboards, every rustle of wind in the trees outside sounded like footsteps. Didn't sleep a wink. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house breathe. It was like it was waiting for something, and I didn't want to find out what. Decided to document the whole spooky experience with my trusty camera. For posterity. Big mistake. The camera seemed to capture things that weren't there, shadows and shapes that made no sense. It was like the house was trying to tell its story through the lens, and it wasn't a happy one. I started taking pictures the next day. The house had always intrigued me, with its eerie silence and the way it seemed to hold on to the past. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of the wind through the broken windows, it all felt like a story waiting to be told. Wanted to show people, prove it wasn't all in my head. Photographed everything. The dusty furniture, each piece a relic of a bygone era, covered in a thick layer of dust that seemed to have settled over decades. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and forgotten memories. The cobwebs in the corners, spun by spiders that had made this place their home. Those creepy staring portraits, their eyes following me as I moved through the rooms, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. Each photograph I took felt like capturing a piece of the house's soul. Developed the photos at the local chemist. The process was almost therapeutic, watching the images slowly come to life in the dark room. It was like unveiling secrets that had been hidden for years. Old bloke, smelled of pipe tobacco and disappointment. He barely glanced at me as I handed over the film, his eyes glazed over with the monotony of his routine, but I could sense a flicker of curiosity when he saw the images as I flicked through the pictures. My blood ran cold. Each image seemed to hold a piece of the puzzle, but one photo stood out. It was as if the house was trying to communicate with me, to show me something I had missed. There, in the background of one shot, a figure. It was barely visible, a shadowy presence that sent chills down my spine. I stared at it, trying to make sense of what I was seeing, blurry, almost invisible, but definitely there. It was like a ghostly imprint, a remnant of something or someone that had once been. My mind raced with possibilities, each one more terrifying than the last. A woman in a long white dress standing at the end of the hallway. Her figure was ethereal, almost translucent, and she seemed to be looking directly at the camera. It was as if she knew I was there watching her. I thought I was imagining things. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to rationalize what I was seeing. Could it be a trick of the light, a flaw in the film? But deep down, I knew it was something more. Must be a trick of the light, I told myself. Yeah, that's it. Light. But the more I looked, the more I felt a connection to the figure, as if she was trying to tell me something, to reveal a story that had been buried in the shadows of that old house. Couldn't shake the image, though. It was as if it had been seared into my mind, a haunting presence that refused to leave. Every time I closed my eyes, there she was, staring back at me with those cold, unfeeling eyes. It was driving me to the brink of madness. Kept seeing her in the corner of my eye, lurking in the shadows. Decided to try again. I had to know if she was real or just a figment of my imagination. The uncertainty was eating me alive. So I gathered my courage and decided to confront the source of my fear. This time I went for the garden. It was a place I had avoided for so long, but I knew I had to face it. The fog was thicker than ever, wrapping around the trees and statues like a shroud. It felt like stepping into another world, one where the rules of reality no longer applied. Overgrown, neglected, full of strange statues covered in moss. Each one seemed to tell a story of its own, stories of forgotten times and lost souls. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay, adding to the eerie atmosphere. The air was thick with fog that day. It clung to my skin, making it hard to breathe. Every step I took felt like wading through a dense, suffocating blanket. The world around me was reduced to vague shapes and shadows, all merging into one another. Couldn't see 2 feet in front of me. The fog was so dense it was like walking through a dream. I had to rely on my other senses to navigate, listening for any sounds that might guide me. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional rustle of leaves or the distant call of a bird. Snapped a few pictures of the statues, their blank eyes watching my every move, developed the photos. Each click of the camera felt like a small victory, a way to capture and control the unknown. But as the images began to appear, my sense of triumph quickly turned to dread. My heart pounded in my chest. There she was again, clearer this time. Her face was more defined, her features sharper. It was as if she was stepping out of the shadows and into the light, revealing herself to me in a way that was both terrifying and mesmerizing. Standing behind a statue of a weeping angel, her face obscured by the fog, but her eyes, those eyes were unmistakable. They seemed to follow me, no matter where I moved. It was as if she was trying to communicate something, a message that I couldn't quite grasp. Those eyes burned through the mist, cold and accusing. They held a power that was both captivating and horrifying, drawing me in and pushing me away at the same time. I knew I had to find out who she was and why she haunted me, but the answers seemed just out of reach, hidden in the depths of the fog. I should have left, packed my bags and run like hell, but something kept me there, a morbid curiosity maybe, or maybe she wanted me to stay. I became obsessed with capturing her on film, spent every waking moment in that house, camera glued to my hand. Each photo she got closer, clearer, more real. In one photo she stood at the foot of my bed, her face inches from the lens. Her eyes, wide and empty, stared directly into mine. A cold shiver ran down my spine. It felt like she was looking into my soul. I stopped sleeping. Every creak of the floorboard, every whisper of the wind sounded like her approach. She was in my head, her presence suffocating me. My grip on reality began to slip. My friends noticed, said I looked terrible, haunted. They were right. I tried to tell them about the photos, about the woman, but the words caught in my throat. How could I explain the unexplainable? They wouldn't understand. They'd think I was mad. They were right to think that. Section 6. The final shot. I decided to take one last photo, one final attempt to capture her essence, her evil. I stood in the hallway, camera raised, my finger trembling on the shutter button. The air grew cold. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end, and then I saw her, standing at the other end of the hallway, her eyes locked on mine. She was close now, so close. Her face was pale and gaunt, her lips stretched into a grotesque smile. I snapped the photo. The flash blinded me. When I could see again, she was gone. Section 7, beyond the lens. I rushed to develop the photo, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the paper. As the image slowly came into focus, a wave of terror washed over me. She was gone. The photo was blank, empty. I searched frantically through the rest of the roll of film. Each photo the same, blank, empty. She was gone from the photographs, but that brought no comfort, because I could hear her now, moving around the house, closer. Section 8, Confrontation. She was no longer confined to the shadows, no longer a figment of the light or a ghostly apparition. She was real, and she was here. I could hear her footsteps creaking on the stairs, slow and deliberate, coming closer with each passing second. Panic clawed at my throat, choking me. I was trapped, alone with whatever malevolent entity had taken root in this house. "Who are you?" I croaked, my voice a dry rasp. Silence. Then a soft, chilling laugh echoed through the empty hallway. It was close now, too close. Section 9. Trapped. I spun around, my heart pounding in my chest, and there she was, standing in the doorway, bathed in the pale moonlight filtering through the window. Her eyes, those cold, dead eyes, bored into me, filled with an ancient and terrible hunger. She took a step towards me, and the temperature in the room plummeted. I was frozen in place, paralyzed by fear. My camera, my only weapon, slipped from my grasp and clattered uselessly to the floor. "No," I whispered, my voice barely audible above the pounding in my ears. But it was too late. She was